Yes, my name is John O'Kelly. It's O''K-E-L-L-E-Y.
And you can put your slate down. So, what inspired you to join the Navy?
Well, it was in the early 60s and the draft was in effect in the United States, and I knew I would be serving the country in one service or the other, and I decided I would make a choice in that matter and join the Navy. I joined the Navy Reserve while I was in college at Florida State in January of 1962.
Did the tradition of service run in your family, or was it your first?
Well, it has, not with my parents so much, but actually my great-great-grandfather, or great-grandfather, was a surgeon in the Army and served with General Custer prior to the massacre, but he survived that. My uncle was a World War II Navy intelligence officer, and he served in South America during the war. And at that time, even at that point, there were a pretty good group of Nazi people in South America, and I'm not sure what he did, but he was an intelligence officer, and actually he was captured by the Germans in South America and was later either released or escaped. I'm not sure which, because I never got the real story about that, and he never spoke of it. But in later years, as I knew him as an adult and me as an adult, he still had the effects of that post-traumatic shock disorder. So he had a lot of imaginary events going on until his death. So yes, my son-in-law was an Air Force lieutenant colonel, and my daughter's with him, so she's a part of the service too.
So, what made you specifically go into the Navy as compared to the other sections?
Well, I think I didn't like the idea of going out in the field and getting shot at, or being vulnerable, I guess, to combat. So I was thinking the Navy might be a better course for me. And I think it turned out to be the right decision.
What was your first impression of the Navy? What was the first thing you immediately saw that struck you?
Well, I don't think there's an immediate, impact of why you make those decisions. I just was, I think it just appealed to me, the ships and the water and that type of thing. Although I never served aboard a ship, I was always ground duty.
So what were the first duties you had in the Navy?
Well, the first duties you have in any service is to go to training camp or boot camp. So I was enlisted, so I went through enlisted boot camp in California, and I did several summer tours as an enlisted man. And while I was in college, I decided I didn't want to go on active duty as an enlisted person, and decided to go to an officer candidate program that the Navy offers to college students. And so ultimately got a commission when I graduated from Florida State.
So when you went into the officer program, what were just some of the things you remember from the officer program? Any specific attributes you got from that?
Well, I think the structure and the training was very concentrated, and there was a lot of discipline involved in that. It wasn't too much physical discipline, stress, but the mental courses we would take for technical and statistical or tactical training was all pretty intense, I felt. I really felt a greater sense of accomplishment graduating from Officers Candidate School than I did from graduating from college.
And some of the things you learned from there still remain with you to this day?
I think so. I think any military man has obtained quite a bit of his character from his service. I believe I have. I think the integrity and so forth that I feel that's attributed to naval officers has been and had an effect on my life as well in my professional career.
Hey Grant, let's hold here for a second. Do we need a shift?
I think, yeah, if we can get him to shift over a little bit, so he's starting to.
This way?
You need to come back this way.
This way? Oh, okay. And look okay.
Yeah, we lost some of the light on you
Okay.
on the left-hand side.
You can turn about 5 to 10 degrees to your shoulders, about 5 to 10 degrees to your left.
My shoulders
Yep.
that way, but keep my head this way.
Well, you can still, what I'm trying to do is set it up so that you can look at him,
Yeah,
but your whole face doesn't
go this way. Too far.
so your whole face doesn't lose the light.
Okay.
We got a good Rembrandt going on there.
Okay. I'm not sure I follow you, but I'll do the best I can.
Yeah, it's just where the lighting
You're
is,
good.
the angle of incidence.
Okay. So kind of like this, but all right.
So what is your first memory of active duty in the Navy?
First memory of active duty in the Navy, I think, was getting in the car and leaving home, knowing that I had a 3-year commitment and I was leaving what was familiar and really not knowing what was ahead of me. It was both exciting and it was both somewhat frightening too. But it was probably 3 of the best years I can think of that I've spent in my life, is to be in the service, and particularly in the Navy. And I made some good friends. I think we did some good things for people.
What was your first assignment?
My first assignment was at a construction battalion center, which is a CB, as you might know the term CB, in Port Hueneme, California. So I was there a year and a half. I was a clubs and messes officer, which means we operated the eating facilities and the entertainment for officers. So that was the first assignment I had was in California, and it was a really good assignment. I had a good duty station. I had a lot of fun. I was a young bachelor. I lived about a block off of the Pacific Ocean. Had a brand new Corvette, and life was pretty darn good. So that was a good year and a half. But I knew the time was up, that I would have to go to another assignment before my 3 years was up, and I was uncertain where they might send me. And so I went to a seminar while I was in the Navy in Treasure Island, which is in San Francisco. It's a Navy base. It was at the time. And there was an officer there who was serving in Da Nang, Vietnam. He was in the clubs and messes system there. And so I became interested in what they were doing there, and ended up, another friend who was another officer in a nearby base, we both volunteered to go, and later got orders to go to Vietnam.
So just going back a little bit, you said you were in California for a year and a half. What did you do to fill your time while you were there,
Besides work?
besides work?
Oh, okay. Well, see, like I said before, I was a young officer living in a snake ranch, which is actually a group of young officers who share a house. They call it, in the Navy, we call it a snake ranch. I'm not sure where that came from, but anyway. It was just pretty regular hours, not strenuous duty. We met a lot of young ladies. We had parties. We would go to the beach. We would go up the coast, take trips on weekends, go skiing, go to Malibu, go to Santa Barbara. It's just a beautiful part of the country. So just what any young single guy would want to do, I think.
What specifically did you do after you left the California base?
Well, after I got orders to go to Vietnam, we were sent first to, and all military people, at least the Navy, are sent to approximately a 3-week survival school training, and part of which is an indoctrination into the Vietnamese culture. And part of it is small weapons training at Camp Pendleton, which is a Marine Corps base. Another part of that is a week at Whidbey Island, which is near a Navy base up there, where you have actual survival skills, where you're put out into the wilderness and are, trying to learn to survive, and also you're put under conditions of being attacked by Viet Cong, who are actually our military people dressed like Viet Cong. So the gist of that whole program is they capture you, they simulate the conditions without killing you. what it would be like to be captured. And some of it's pretty frightening, but you're not going to die. But I don't think I could do it today. They put you in a box about the size of a foot locker. And I'm a little taller than that box is, and so you're on your face and your knees and your legs are crossed. And the only way they could get me in that was somebody to sit on the box because it wouldn't shut. So you're in there for a period of time. So if you have any type of claustrophobia, it's pretty difficult. I managed it. But anyway, that was the training part, and before that, then we went to Vietnam after that.
So you said during the training you simulated some pretty rough
Yes.
trials. What effect did they have on you before you went into the war? Did they cause a sense of wariness? Did they cause a sense of
Well, it just makes you aware that we really don't want to be captured. And it wasn't that bad. It was not real. It was, I don't want to over-exaggerate that. Everybody goes through that. It's just part of the training. So I think it's to get you prepared in case that does happen to you, you know, how you would react to it and see what your mental capacity is to deal with it. So, but then I was shipped over to Da Nang after that.
So after your training camp, where were you stationed?
Well, I went to Da Nang, Vietnam, South Vietnam, and was reported there for duty. And with the understanding that I was going to be going into the clubs and messes system, which was composed of quite a number of club operation. We had 17 clubs, 8 or 10 officers, and about 85 enlisted, and about 700 Vietnamese employees throughout I Corps, which is the northern portion of South Vietnam, which they separated Vietnam into corps, or there's 1, 2, 3, and 4 corps. So I was assigned eventually to that clubs and messes division, but the first month I was there, I was kind of on a temporary assignment where I was the full-time 12 hours on, 12 hours off officer of the day at the Naval Support Activity Headquarters, which is the organization that I was assigned to, the Naval Support Activity Da Nang. So basically, it's like officer of the day is somewhat like a personal representative of the commanding officer of that activity, who was an admiral. So you basically greet and meet people who come in and out of the gates to that. So it's a compound. And that was during the Tet Offensive of 1968. I arrived in December of 1967. And at that point, I hadn't been permanently assigned to clubs and messes. They were considering putting me on asked me if I'd be interested in being on a patrol boat. And I said I didn't have any experience doing that. I hadn't been in, but you know, if that's what they wanted me to do, I'd do it. But I thought I was going to be in clubs and messes. And anyway, they eventually put me in clubs and messes, where I worked for the rest of the tour over there.
Okay, so I see that you got a Navy Commendation Medal and another campaign medal. Did you get those from being a good officer of the day, or what did you earn those from?
Well, the other medals, I don't remember that, but they're all pretty much, everybody gets them. The Navy Commendation is not really a high award. It's just basically for doing your job, and I think and just being competent at what you're doing. I didn't do anything heroic. I wasn't in combat. Our support was for the troops who were in combat. We supplied them entertainment, food and beverages, and a place to go when they were able to go.
Did it give you a new sense of purpose to just help the soldiers coming back from the front lines, to help them kind of readjust to the more civilized life?
Well, that's kind of hard to to say. I mean, I could say that the experience was, I don't know, rewarding or I guess what I'm saying, I'm seeing guys, Army, Marine, Navy, Air Force come into our clubs. We had a number of enlisted clubs and officers clubs we operated. And one of my jobs was to go around to these clubs and oversee the management of it. I guess the most amazing thing to me was to see young guys on in-country R&R. We were at Chana Beach is where we were, and go into our facilities and letting off steam. They would get drunk. They would roll in the ocean. But what I was imagining and realizing this whole time was that those guys have just come in from combat, and I wasn't in combat. And they deserved anything they can do to get out of that environment. And so we didn't have a whole lot of order in our clubs. We let it happen as much as we could within limits. And knowing in my mind that many of those young guys who were 17 and 18 years old may never go home alive. So the reward, if there is any, or there's no reward in war, I don't think, but I knew that these people had experienced something that I had not experienced. I was in a position to do my job that I could, to help them in any way.